Hello, and welcome to another episode of Rants and Raves, which I should really rebrand. It's not a great name, and I should at least call it like Solipsis Rants and Raves or something. Anyway, that's a whole sidebar that I've started out the video on, but we're rolling. Um, Based on the title I'm probably using for this video, this looks like it's about OBS, and it is. But it's also about a whole lot of other things, and I'm very much resisting the urge to turn this into a massive, massive video, because as I was thinking about this, the thing that triggered this thought process and that I've been thinking about for a while now was it's a problem because it's attached to so many other thoughts, because it's about not just like technical knowledge and personal conduct and these all these other different topics. It's also about a video, or actually set of videos that I have somewhere in the pipeline that I want to do about using technology, and specifically things about microphones and using mics in our current media environment. So anyway, the title of this video is probably something along the lines of "It's not OBS's fault," and that is because once again I've been hit today with something that reminded me of this thought, which is, as if you're watching this, there's a good chance you're something like me and you spend a decent amount of time consuming your content on the internet from people who are considered, big air quotes, content creators. I hate that terminology, but that's a separate issue. And so most people are doing this semi-professionally. Maybe it's a career, but as far as the actual knowledge required to get into that career, that's sort of what I'm touching on today. Because I was in a stream, and I watch quite a lot of streams and videos from various people, but it is a more prevalent thing that I see in streaming these days, where people have technical issues and then they say it's OBS's fault. Directly or indirectly, they say it's OBS's fault. And this constantly irks me for reasons I will get into. But in this particular case, the most recent case today, it was specifically just because I started in with a conversation with the person, trying to help them troubleshoot. And they were like, it was, or actually, it was about a different day, rather, where they had technical issues. And they brought it back up again, and I had been talking to them about it. And it was an issue of, actually, it was this plugin that I hadn't updated for 2 years. Okay, pause. 1, not OBS's problem. 2, that's on you for not updating the plugin or removing it. That's a third-party plugin that you didn't update. So this gets into a whole topic about the blame game and the current, trend of it being very trendy to like blame whoever for whatever. And I'm going to avoid most of that because it's just like going to broaden this topic way out of perspective. But specifically on the topic of OBS and streaming and recording video content for the internet, I need to defend OBS because I'm tired of hearing people shit on OBS like there's something wrong with it. OBS is not perfect. Don't get me wrong. It has its issues here and there, but I need you guys to understand. I need everyone to understand, and this will never reach the people it needs to actually reach. OBS is a godsend. It's, by all accounts, by software standards, incredible. Stunning, even. It is free open source software that props up multiple industries, entire billions of dollars, I would say, at least many, many millions of dollars of people's livelihoods are propped up on this one piece of software that is free. It is made by volunteers who contribute their time and effort to making a very complicated piece of software that beats out anything that any first party has tried to put forward. And Again, it does not mean it's without flaws, without issues, or without reason to be critical about it. But OBS is amazing. A lot of people these days, especially with the rise of streaming and the rise of even more video content creation at a level I didn't really expect when I started, which was like 14 years ago now, people don't have a lot of historical perspective. That's a whole other topic about how people lack historical perspective for lots of things that they talk about. But we're keeping it tight here. And we're talking about historical perspective on video recording and video streaming. Before OBS existed, or when OBS was in its very fledgling stages, the alternate options, including they were all paid options basically, were terrible, atrocious. Some of my very early videos, most of my first couple of years of videos were not on OBS because OBS didn't exist or was not in a state where it was usable. And it was awful. Everything else that came before OBS pales in comparison, even to its early versions. And the fact that not only is it as incredible as it is, flexible as it is, but that it's also freeware made by volunteers, I need everybody to understand how amazing that is. Because by comparison, I would rather troubleshoot OBS than I would the Adobe Suite, one of the flagship pieces of software in all of computing that most people, some of the most people in the world, have bought for at various times and for various reasons. By comparison, the Adobe Suite is a buggy mess compared to OBS. So this is about a bunch of things, even though I'm trying to keep this tight. For her, it's free. It is incredibly stable. It is incredibly complicated. It hooks into so many different things, and it does it with a seamlessness that if you don't have any technical background, you'll have no appreciation for. And that's not to blame anyone who uses this software and doesn't have a full technical understanding of what's under the hood. That's not what I'm advocating here, that, you can't use it unless you appreciate it fully. I need you to know that I need people to recognize who talk like this, that if OBS disappeared tomorrow, it just was wiped off the face of the earth, there are huge industries that would just dissolve. And the alternative options are garbage by comparison. So when people talk like OBS crashed, this gets into a whole bunch of different issues. Yes, OBS may have crashed, or maybe it didn't, or maybe it does or doesn't have problems. But I'm trying so hard not to delve into different topics. There are issues with the platforms like Twitch and YouTube, which send data back and forth with OBS, and which OBS can only do so much with. So if there's a problem with the front end service that you're sending to, that has its own issues. And it can look like OBS is a problem, and it's not. When you load in things like plugins and all these third-party things, which OBS has even moved to making some of those basically first-party provided for audio compressors and things like that. But if you add those things on and you don't know how to do any technical troubleshooting, and the process for your reaction to it is OBS had a problem, therefore OBS is the problem, that irks me. Now, I have a particular set of skills and perspectives that makes this particularly bothersome to me. Having worked in the industries that I've worked with the software I've worked with, and worked with the people that I've worked with, this also makes it a particular pet peeve of mine, and I'm sure it doesn't bother most people the way it does me. But especially from a just basic troubleshooting perspective, people are very quick to blame. And that happens whether in technical troubleshooting or just in general. People's conduct these days is very quick to blame, rather than to either look for problems or look for solutions. So it's very easy to look at something like OBS and go, OBS crashed, therefore OBS is the problem. If you work in various troubleshooting circles or just customer service in general, you probably recognize at some level the difference between a problem and a symptom. The problem is what you're actually trying to fix. The symptom is what people actually see. And sometimes those two things are the same thing, but more often than not, they are not. Often the symptom is what people see, and they blame the wrong thing as a result because they don't understand how things work. Now, again, really trying to keep this tight. The OBS under the hood runs so many different things at the same time that require, if you really want to understand them well, require a shocking level of technical knowledge just to understand how to do your settings correctly. And when you are a fledgling content creator, streamer, video maker, whatever, it's understandable that you don't invest a huge amount of time into, you don't spend hours and hours and hours learning all of the details of a piece of software. You just want to make it go, right? And unfortunately, OBS is too easy. This is to its credit, but it does cause problems as a result. OBS is too easy to open up and just start doing stuff. And so when stuff suddenly doesn't work, people are surprised because everything was set up for them. They don't know that everything was set up for them, that all of the defaults that were set in there were so finely tuned so that it was very likely they'd be successful on their first try with no extra configuration needed, with minimal configuration, that they never had to learn anything that had to do with the actual technical side of things. And so when their stream is a little bit choppy, or it doesn't, it has this, that, or the other problem, people get upset at the software. But it's, for want of a better phrase, it is more often than not a personal failure. In technical circles, in various technical circles, this is very common in IT, but it actually dates back further and it goes into a lot of different industries. There's a thing that gets thrown around. There's a term that gets thrown around, and it's sort of hush-hush for reasons that'll be apparent in a second, which is RTFM. Read the fucking manual. Now, this dates back to times when people actually got manuals for stuff. Now you basically don't get a manual at all. If you do, it's a digital one that nobody's going to find in the first place. At least back in the day, you used to get actual physical manuals, a piece of paper or papers that you'd have to read to get an understanding of stuff. And we are living in an era where people just assume that as soon as they touch a thing, they will know how to use it completely without having had to learn anything. And I'm not going to knock that, because ease of use is incredibly important and worth always striving for. If you can hand somebody and they know how to use it already, that means you did a really, really good job. But the problem with that also is that if people have gotten so used to things just working right out of the box, then when something goes wrong or doesn't work as expected, or they're asked to learn something, they get very upset about it. Shockingly upset. And so, especially when it comes to something like recording or streaming, where you may be live to some number of people, having the lack of self-awareness to broadcast to whomever that is, however many people, that, oh, such and such is the problem. The arrogance to say this is the problem rather than it's the old like Simpsons quote, we've tried nothing and we're all out of ideas. That's basically the behavior that's exhibited by, I would say, probably the vast majority of people in the creator space these days, because it's just not the norm anymore to try and learn a thing. It's the norm to be handed something and have it just work. And under the hood of OBS, this free piece of incredibly complicated software, everything works pretty well right off the bat. And if you don't know what you're doing, and if you do things like, I hear this all the time, like you talk to your friend who also does this work, and you just copied all their settings with no understanding of what any of those settings do, and it didn't work, or it worked for a while and then broke, that's you. That's not the software. So I want to defend OBS, but I also want to use this as an opportunity to advocate for learning a thing. And I know it's hard. I know even for me, even for somebody who grew up in an era where reading manuals was standard operating procedure, this is something like, even for me, it's hard sometimes to pick up something and not fully understand it off the bat. I am resistant to it as well. And so for a different generation of people, or people who are in different, have had different experiences than me, I understand that it's probably even harder to resist the urge to just call something broken or say that it's the fault of something else, rather than to take responsibility and say, hey, maybe there's something about my setup that's not right. Maybe if I'm having this issue persistently, something's not right. Maybe I could improve the outcomes if I learned a little bit. And I know that's just not the culture these days. But in my tiny, tiny, tiny little corner of the internet, I just want to shout to the heavens, please be open to learning. Especially if you're doing stuff that is generally highly technical. There's a lot to learn if you want to be a content creator of any kind. Even at the most base level, learning how to operate a microphone is not a small feat. And again, it's been made into something that's way easier than it was once upon a time, and that's not a bad thing. But as in the videos that I will get to at some point, I swear, because that's a whole topic that I'm very passionate about. Learning how to use a microphone is a complicated process, and it takes some time, and you have to know where to look in the first place. And we're also living in an era of such saturation of information that trying to find good, useful information that will actually get you to a success and an understanding of what you've done, that is rare. Learning stuff is rare these days. Being taught well is rare. Being talked to with respect and an understanding is rare. Rather than, like, we live in an era where you might try and look up tutorials and you just might find dozens of videos where they make fun of you, basically. That's the media landscape we are unfortunately in. So in my, fight against the dying of the light little way, I want to be an advocate for being open to learning and being open to teaching and for learning how to teach. And so please don't say that OBS is the problem if you don't know that OBS is the problem. Chances are it isn't. It's incredibly well maintained. It is shocking, actually, how much work is put into it and how careful they are about not rolling out new stuff that's broken. It is a shining beacon of how good free open source software can be, and the production of that software can be when people work really hard at it and are really careful with it. So defend OBS, thank OBS for existing, and take your ego back a little bit if you've ever done this, and I have too. Take a step back and say, do I have something I could learn? Anyway, thank you guys for watching another episode of whatever this is called. I'll see you guys next time.